Oh, God. Oh, we're on TV. So, thanks for coming, guys. I was gonna just quickly introduce Bart Miller. He's with our appraisal management company. Basically, he's our go-to guy for anything appraisal related. Knows all, tells all. But how long you been doing this, Bart? You tell most. Tell some for sure. So what we envisioned was just an opportunity to kind of ask any questions that you might have about anything. Bart's got some stuff that he can share, obviously, but things that you're seeing, things that you're curious about, as far as like how to approach an appraiser, what's the appropriate way to positively impact value without getting in trouble, or any of those types of things. So have at it, free reign, ask your questions, and figure it all out. So take it away, Bart.
Right. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
So, just so you'll know, I know my accent's gonna throw you off a little bit.
Oh, I sold the accent all.
I can tell you when I go up to Philadelphia, where I used to live for a long time, when I come up here and I talk to somebody, I always get like 10, 20 points shaved off my IQ automatically. We're talking about appraisals, so I don't have to be a genius to talk about these things. I've been in the appraisal management business for, I don't think you've ever heard me say this, 37 years now. Whoa. So way back to the very beginning of this kind of stuff. I've been in the appraisal business a little longer than that. So, yeah, I come to you from a point of a lot of long-term hard-won experience. So the things that I'm talking about, despite how I sound, actually, there's some national experience behind it, and I'm happy to be up here today. I love coming up here. One of the things that I'd like to cover are changes in the forms that's coming. Not that this stuff really impacts you, but it will over time as you start seeing us roll out a new appraisal form and some changes to a process that affects your buyer and Supreme a lot, and that's property inspection waivers, where you apply for a loan, don't have to get an appraisal. There's no minor changes to that. Then we can get into some of the nitty gritty details, things you want to talk about. I don't have a prepared talk. I like to talk about what you guys want to talk about, but we'll get this out of the way first. There's a new UAD when back in 2012, when we rolled out the uniform data collection portal, where we had to go to, as you know, all these things get uploaded to Fannie and Freddie. Every time we do a purchase assignment, whether the loan closes or not, that appraisal gets uploaded to the portal. So all that data in that appraisal is skimmed off and put in this huge database. When it first started, we all had these big brother fears that everything we did was now going to be monitored by someone in Washington that was watching over our shoulders. But it's actually proved to be a very good thing for improving the overall quality of appraisals. And in the grand scheme, it helps to hold down lending costs because it makes us more efficient on the appraisal side. So as this data's been piled up over the last 13, 14 years, they've come to the point where a couple of years ago, they decided now we've got enough data, we're going to rewrite the form. So the forms that are coming out now are the UAD. It's the 3.6 data set. I'm not a technician, so I just know that's the number. And it's going to be a form that's a form field drop down. So instead of having a condo form or a 1004 form for a single family property or a duplex form, it's just going to be one document. And as we fill the report out as appraisers, when we check a box, the appropriate fields will drop and we'll fill them out. So if it's a refinance transaction, for example, we check refinance, there's not going to be all that sales data information that pops in saying what's the contract process, that no, it's just an unnecessary component. So that's going to be a change you're going to see over the next, we're supposed to start running it in September. I don't believe that'll happen, but certainly within the next year, if you look at any of the appraisals you're having done on any of your properties, you'll notice the change. And appraisers will certainly be talking about it because it's big for everybody in the industry. So that's out there. Just something for you to be aware of, The second thing I want to cover before we get into anything too detailed is when you get a property inspection waiver, that just means that Fannie Freddie, it's uploaded, they're accepting the contract price or for refi, the amount that they put in as the estimate, and saying that's okay. The borrower and the property profile from all that data we collected over here over the years in this neighborhood says we don't need an appraisal on that, so you proceed without one. I will say this as an aside. If your borrower gets a PIW, an inspection waiver, but they want an appraisal, I counsel against it, because so often you've got a approved purchase ready to go ahead. The borrower said, I need that appraisal done. And we go do it. Seems like it always comes in different with those wrenching things. So that's just anecdotal experience. If you've got a $500,000 purchase where you've got a property inspection waiver, if the borrower's that well qualified that he can get a PIW and you've got one, please go with it. Because if he wants to get that appraisal, having contact Ben or Eric and get one done on the side outside of the lending process if that makes him feel good, but don't run it through the mortgage loan application, because invariably the appraisal will come back at 490 and clear the deal. And it just seems like that's Murphy's Law. As we move forward, they've decided this next onslaught, when the dam breaks again and everybody's busy like they were 4 years ago, you know, underwater, yeah, and it will, it's going to happen. There's so much pent-up demand out there that they've set this PIW up so they can adjust it and say, we want more of them done, we want fewer of them done. It's like a spigot, because there's only a finite number of appraisers, which you learned if you've been in this business any length of time, and none of us are getting any younger. I can't believe I'm still here. But there's only so much they can do. And this PIW process, they thought, what can we do to take some of the pressure off the appraisal industry and ensure that we're analyzing our collateral properly. They came up with this process. It's not a PIW and it's not an appraisal. It's an in-between thing. It's called value acceptance with data collection, property data report. And I've got one here that's a live one if you want to look at it later, but I didn't redact anything, and this was somebody's actual loan, so I'm not supposed to share it, but I can let you see what it looks like if you want. And it is an inspection that's done. They're $250, what we charge across the country, where an inspector, a qualified and vetted background check person, they can be an agent, they can be a broker, they can be an appraiser, or a property inspector. They don't have to be an appraiser. They've got this software on their phone. They walk through the house with this running, and it measures the whole house and draws a floor plan. It gets uploaded directly to Fannie and Freddie. We don't see it till it's finished. And it comes back approved, and this is the report you get. So it takes 3 days instead of a week for an appraisal, and it's a go-between between the PIW and an actual appraisal. So I'm hopeful, anything that speeds things up for us and takes the load off when the appraisers get crushed again, I'm all for. So Ben asked me about AVMs today. AVMs are a tool to use in your process, but they're not the answer, because they're going to come back. They're just as likely to come back with exactly the number you're looking for as something that's either way lower than you expected or way higher. They're a tool. It's something you want to use as a component to your valuation process. You don't just run an AVM and say, hey, I got 900,000, let's go with it, because it could be 8, could be 1 million, or something in between. But this PIW thing, you will start to see this over the next year, where the lender will say, hey, you got a PDR, it's going to be somebody to come out. The reason I'm telling you this, if you're a listing agent and the person shows up as not an appraiser, I don't want you freaking out. It could be a property inspector or another agent that just does these on the side. It's just a data collection point, and they don't make decisions. They just walk through the house and take pictures of all the rooms and do this scan that they send, that uploads to this capture stuff, and it comes back. There's 1 million pictures in here, and it's pretty good. And this is all produced from just walking through the house with the phone on. Pretty cool technology. I've tested it. I've actually done a few of them. It works. It's not flawless, but it's getting better every day. So if you see those,
What's that called again, first?
well, Freddie Mac calls them ACE plus PDR, which is property data report.
Fannie Mae, you know, they never can align on what they call things. But they, on the Fannie Mae side, they call it value acceptance plus PDR. So don't ask me how they came up with these names. I don't care. I mean, it's just the nature of who they are. But they're gonna be, you're gonna run into one, and just be aware that when, you know, yes, ma'am.
So what's the difference with the PIW?
The PIW is just a complete inspection waiver. No inspections being done.
Property inspection.
Yeah, property inspection waiver. And then between that and the appraisal is this ACE plus PDR. And then after that, they require full appraisal. Now, if this report comes back to the GSEs with a lot of property damage or issues with the property itself, they'll reject it and require a full appraisal. And I've seen that happen. They're like, well, we have to get an appraisal. We just paid for that. It's a risk you run, but it happens rarely. You know, if you know your property's not in good shape and you're trying to run it through for a conventional loan, maybe you ought to think twice about, you know, talk to your lender. Have Eric call me. We talk through these things all the time before loans are done. Is this thing going to qualify or not? And if I don't know from what I can find out and my team doesn't, we'll call one of our local guys. We got some good guys here in this part of the world. And I have MLS for North Star. So we can look at everything from a desk where my office is and with our guys in the field. Most of the time we can figure out whether you're going to run into problems or not. If you got a, you know, an old, it's an estate sale and it hadn't been occupied for 5 years, that kind of thing. So that's what's going on in the world. And now we can talk about things that are just appraisal related. So if you got a question, just pop up, because I've got a little bit of ADD and I just kind of ramble a little bit. But I'll tell you about some things that you can do when you've got a property that's listed too high and you know it, which happens because your seller says, I've got to have $1 million for this, and we'll put it on the market and see what happens. And you actually get some nice person that offers $1 million for it, but you're not going to get an appraisal for $1 million. How we rectify that, or vice versa. You know, if things get bid up really high, how we deal with that, and things you can do to talk to the appraiser if you want to. There's nothing in the world, and if an appraiser tells you they can't talk to you, they're just being recalcitrant, difficult, and there's obstinance is not how we make a living in this business. If you want to talk to an appraiser, you should be able to. Now, if you want to call him and say, I need $500,000 off on this deal, or I'm going to turn you into the state, that's not what we're talking about. You know, we're talking about talking through a problem as a couple of adults, and you've given them the information. How'd you come up with this list price? You give them all the data, everything you did to determine this list price. Or when the appraiser calls and says, how did you come up with this $1 million list price? Because I can't find it for, well, the seller wanted to put it on the market for that, so I agreed to. That's an honest answer. It happens. You know, it doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. And then at least they know, you know, where they are, and then we got to figure out how to do the best we can. When a property is bid up, which happened a lot, and it's starting to happen again in certain places. You know, you got a 750 listing, and somebody's offered 825 because they need the house. They want, you know, a lot of reasons why people run to the gun to buy a house. And there are either two things happen. They either pony up the difference, and they know they're going to have to, or on the appraisal side, we just do the very best we can. And just because something's listed for 800,000 doesn't mean that's the highest value we can put on it as an appraiser. And when an appraiser tells you that, if it ever happens, and I'm sure it's happened to you once or twice, you got to raise your hand and talk to your lender about it. A listing, it varies by market. You know, in California, list prices are like, hey, let's start the bidding here. You know, in Texas forever, nothing ever went above list price. That was what the seller asked, and then the bids came in lower, you know, offers came in lower. It was that way for the first 2 decades of my career. It's changed a lot now, but, and I'm not sure how it is here. I think it's kind of a mix here. I mean, I know you guys list properties for a number, and you're going to get some pretty quick reaction to it. And as long as there's data in the market to support that, then we'll be fine. I can't stand an appraiser that says, well, it listed for 6, so that's as high as I'm going. I see it all the time, and I don't work with those people long. So, but if it's listed for 6 and the bids are up at 650, and we come in at 625, then we try to figure out a way to get what's best for the buyer and the lender, which in this case, we're talking about Supreme, because I don't want to talk about anybody else. Yeah,
There is no one else.
yeah, there is no one else, yeah.
Not in this room, right?
But we try to, you know, in understanding this, the appraisal is done on behalf of the lender to determine collateral value. That's the technical reason why we're doing it. So when the listing agent and the seller call me up and start talking about my mama and stuff, it's you know, it's a little difficult because you have to explain to them. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's the truth. I mean, we get it all. People get like we're talking. It's an emotional business sometimes, but we've got to make sure that that buyer, who we technically are working for, the appraiser, wants to proceed with that reconsideration. And if that's the case, and all parties are in agreement, we'll work really hard to help you guys come up with a solution that works. We don't do reconsiderations in our little company as just a cursory matter of document processing. My team gets involved with them. We try to make sure we find the right data. We try to come up with a solution that makes everybody happy. A lot of times we can't get to that sale price, but a lot of times we can get very close enough. You know, you guys make a deal and everybody's happy. Or there are cases where no matter what you want, we simply can't get there. And if we can't, it won't be from lack of effort and making sure we covered all the data points that we had to. So when you, in the rare instance nowadays, that you get an appraisal that's way short, what's the first thing you need to do? You talk to the lender and say, what do I need to do to appeal this and get a reconsideration going? He's going to tell you, get together your best sales that support how you list it, how you come up, how you guys came to an agreed price. That doesn't mean give me a run of the entire MLS database and send it over, because that doesn't help. That also doesn't mean pull everything that's sold for $250 a square foot and send it to me. We cannot, and you know this, value properties based on price per square foot. It's a great cocktail party discussion that, hey, this neighborhood is now up for like $300 a foot. We have those all the time. It's a macro top thing to talk about. It doesn't work on the individual transaction level because there's so many amenities and size factors that impact price per square foot. It's like if you just went out and said, hey, every house in this neighborhood is selling for $200,000 a garage stall now. We're doing good. It doesn't make sense when you think about a unit comparison like that. So don't run it that way. Find those properties in the neighborhood that you use, plus anything that best matches the subject. And you want to match as many physical characteristics as you can. Size, room count, garage count, view amenity, those kinds of things. If you've got a property, and I hate to use this, but golf course is simple. I wouldn't give you a nickel for being on a golf course, but that's not, not who I am. I mean, that's not who everybody is. A lot of people are different. Let's say everything on the golf course, that site, those views are $100,000 plus. But the appraiser only used one, and there was 2 more that were a year and a half old. Get those in there so we can look at them and analyze them. You see what I'm saying? Yes, ma'am.
Can you help us with those parameters again? Like, how far do you typically go back? What mile radius do you typically go? Like, where can we be helping the appraiser in this by pulling the correct data? Or like this
I put
more.
a sweater on today. I thought it was going to be cold up here. All right, let's talk. Can we just jump ahead and go over that right now? So, okay, here's the thing. When they built that UCD portal, all the underwriting guidelines, the old guidelines that said 1 mile, you have to bracket one bigger, one smaller, those things went away. What the portal now says is find those sales that are most comparable to the subject and would appeal as a competing property for that buyer. And here's a very rudimentary way of looking at it. I know these exist up here, but I'm more familiar with my home world, so I'll tell you about that. I lived in Philly, but I'm a Texan, so down there where I lived was a pretty rural market growing up. But it was on the way outskirts of, it was like St. Cloud compared to Minneapolis. It's out there, but it's not, I don't know if that's good or not. How far is that, an hour and a half?
Good, actually.
So back in the day, in the 70s or early 80s, a developer, just a country developer, went out and bought this 100-acre tract. And he put a big horseshoe-shaped street in and cut it up into 2 or 3 acre lots. And they built 2,500 square foot ranch houses all over it. You keep a horse out there, whatever. It was rural, but all right. And then he went over here on the other side of town, 10 miles away, and did the same thing. And in the interim 30 years, it all grew up with tract homes all around it. And your buyers say, man, we'd like a couple acres, old house we can renovate that's in this market. And so they're looking at these 2,500 square foot houses that are on 2 acres. But under the old underwriting guidelines, let's say there's one sale in that neighborhood. Appraiser's got one, but he has to have 2 more. Under the old guidelines, he would have to stay within a mile and get these houses on 10,000 square foot lots that were tract houses built in the 90s or 2000s and cram them into the report. Same buyer's not looking for those houses, it's looking for this one. But what the model says, the most appropriate is to go 10 miles away and get the 2 in this other subdivision that was subdivided just like ours in the 70s, 80s, and compare them. They're in the same school district, or maybe they're not, but they're in the same market. That buyer would just as willingly look here as he would 10 miles away here. And those are the true comparable sales. So don't let any of those old guidelines that people tell you, I got to stay within a mile. Not if it's a property. Now, if it's a tract home and he's going 14 subdivisions over to get a tract home there's where they're selling for more, that's not a comp either. But that's the thing the model's allowed us to do. It's given us the freedom to step away from those old underwriting guidelines that were very much arbitrary constraints. Because back in the day, the underwriter had no way to rein in what the appraiser was doing. So they put these, give me one bigger, one smaller, all within a mile, one newer, one older. And if you do that, then at least we've got some idea that you're looking at all the properties, not just giving me one set. So you want to be as close as possible, but you also don't want to be so close that you're omitting appropriate sales. Yes?
Yeah, true for multifamily too, that you'd go to find the most like kind, even if it's further away.
Yeah, are you talking about single family attached like row homes or duplexes? Okay, well, here's the thing about duplexes. They are in a lot, and I'm talking about in the aggregate, in the broad market, they represent such a small fraction of the overall market that you pretty much have to go where you have to go. And what you want to do, considerations there come down to buyers of investment properties like that. They're looking at it 2 ways. They're looking for tax or income issues. And when homeowners are looking for a place to live and market appreciation in the real estate. So there's a lot of fine tuning that goes into that, but you want to make sure that you're not in a market that's all investor driven, because they're buying for a different reason. That's why you'll get an investor that comes in and says, hey, I want this duplex. All the duplexes have sold in this area for $400,000, but he's willing to pay $5 million. And then they get mad because I can't appraise it for $5 million, but he's doing that for a tax reason. So as long as you're cognizant of that, yeah, you go wherever you need to go, really. So 5 miles, 7 miles in a lot of markets is not uncommon, or more. But you don't want to go from, I don't know, what's the fanciest town here?
Atlanta.
You don't want to go from where I would be living to a diner to pull comps out. You got to make sure you're in somewhat of a comparable market.
How long can the sale, do you go a year back, 2 years back?
That's part of this other question. If, let's say in that subdivision I was talking about, there was one current sale, but there were 2 from 2 years ago. those take precedence over the subdivision tract homes, and you bring them current to the market. So,
Like a limit, like if they were 5 years ago.
well, you gotta be reasonable. 5 years can contribute to the appraisal, but it can't be a deciding sale for the appraisal. It can be included as an explanatory thing that, hey, 5 years ago, 10 of these sold, and the annual appreciation's been X%. So these are supportive of our transaction, but they're not proving it. Yeah, so put the date in there that you need to, and don't let an appraiser say, I can't go more than 12 months, sorry. You know, it's not gonna, that's not the rule.
And then why they would say, so say we're looking at a home in Edina, they would take the average appreciation for a similar type home in Edina and apply that to 2 years back, apply that.
Yeah, or something that they can reasonably support. As a reader of an appraisal, as another appraiser, I wanna read what they've done
Sure.
and see that it makes sense. You know, I can't prove it, so I'm not doing it. I can't tell you how many times we get in an appraisal that says, that pool, that solar, that amenity, whatever it is, has no value because I can't find a sale with that, but look, it's there, you know? I mean, you have to use your judgment at that point and say, look, this is the only pool sale in the neighborhood. I'm gonna say that it contributes X, and if they've negotiated a sale and we're at 250, but he's coming in at 240 because he's not giving the pool any value, guess what the number is? It's 10,000, give or take. So it's just common sense, mainly.
Or what about like common for the area, like ADUs and that type of thing? Is that
ADUs
fall into that same idea of like?
Yeah,
amenities?
ADUs are taking on a new life, and I'm sure in Minnesota, being the progressive state that it is, they're gonna do things a lot like California. In California, you can put as many units on a lot as you can fit on there. That's how one way they're trying to solve the housing crisis. So if you bought a home in this nice secluded single-family neighborhood 30 years ago, and now you're retiring and you love your home and you realize the rules changed, you wanted to be out there on half-acre lots because it was quiet, and now your neighbors are both slinging up duplexes in the backyard. There's nothing you can do about it because you put ADUs. Single-family zoning basically was eradicated. Now, I'm being a little harsh, but that's effectively what happened. It's also the rule that you build new constructions in California, you have to have solar. You have to have self-contained solar in the house, or it has to be in an HOA where they have community solar. Now, this is a big study for us appraisers out there, where there's a new subdivision gone in with all solar next to one that got just under the wire with no solar. And over the next few years, we'll see how those trend in sales. We can see which one's got more demand.
Do multiple offers come into play as well, or not necessarily?
Multiple offers come into play a lot when there's a shortage in the market, and that's why things are getting bid up. And we got into a situation several years ago where every one of you would call my office and say, we've got multiple offers. Yeah, I know. Everybody's got multiple offers. You know, but when it's a unique property and it's a really cool property for lack of, and it comes on the market in an area where, you know, these homeowners are all real stable and they never sell. Most of them sell before they get listed. One of those kind of markets. When you do list and you get multiple offers, that's something the appraiser needs to be made aware of and take into consideration when that high bid that was accepted is 200 grand above the list price. Now, it's unlikely that he can close that gap that far, and I'm talking about a $500,000 property that gets bid up to 650 or something. Very unlikely, but he can certainly try, and part of his argument is going to be the demand for these properties is this strong, but we have no market support because these houses don't sell. And if he just says, nope, sorry, I'm appraising it for the list price, because then you got to raise your hand and we got to talk through it with the appraiser. If we get an appraisal back that we manage through my IMC, and it's not taking all the factors into consideration, which in my opinion could be considered misleading, we'll get another one. If that's declared deficient, we'll get another one. I don't take that action lightly, but I also don't let Joe Schmo out in the field dictate the terms of an entire transaction like that. He's one component, and I'm an appraiser, so I can talk bad about us if I want to, you know. But we don't let that stand if if there's something we can do about it. Now, where you're just telling me the regular house, oh, look, there are multiple offers and we can't see evidence of that anywhere in the neighborhood, then you'd have to show me those offers for me. Not that I'm calling your name, but, you know, seeing is believing sometimes.
So a follow-up to that then, is it more on a unicorn or is it even like, let's say a home goes 8% over list or something, and we have 5 offers, do you normally want to see that data or not?
You can just tell us. I mean, we get to know who the honest dealers are out there. And that's one thing I suggest, and I know all of you do, or you wouldn't be in here. But dealing with an appraiser in the most honest manner is always the best course. I've had lenders, loan officers who I'm no longer associated with, that their first move was to lie to me. And if that didn't work, their second move was to lie again. And then if the third time it didn't work, they'd lie again. You know, I just couldn't get a straight answer out of them for anything. So sharing the information with the appraiser should help. It should mean something. It has value. I mean, it needs to be reflected in their analysis.
So it would be okay as a standard practice to put all of your collected data that you gather for listing and your multiple offers and leave it there for them, or is it better to do a phone
The
call?
offers are, I don't think by law you can disclose those offers to me, but you can tell me. Just like when we're trying to track down something in a neighborhood where we've got limited data, but we see one's gone pending. If I call you and say, man, I'm busting my tail over here to get this 201 Main Street done, and I see that's pending, you're really technically not supposed to disclose that. But if you give us a good hint, sometimes it helps because we want to put that in the report because it's the most relevant current data. Sometimes we'll get it from builders. They'll just say, yeah, this one's under contract at this much. We're not, our report's not public. It's a private report done. So I'm not giving legal advice here by any means, but boy, sometimes it really helps to know if you've got a firm offer that's going to close in 3 days, and it makes a difference, you'll be forever remembered by our president if it helps, you know, move something forward, because someday we'd like to be able to help you back, you know, but if it's just a deal that just went pending yesterday and it's not closing for a month, we get it. We got to move on and find something else. But we can say 203 Main Street went pending yesterday. We can't get the details on it, but it should be closing in a month. A lot of times, buyer and seller and lender will say, hold for a month and let's get that info, because it's that critical to the transaction. I have one on hold now. It's a new construction deal that I'm personally dealing with for my team. It's the same situation. The builder does a lot of business through us, and they're like, just wait till this one closes. They wouldn't disclose. They said it's going to make a difference in this transaction. What else can I ramble about?
Can you talk about, so not about specific commission, but how before you could see what commission was being offered and how that was being laid into the purchase price? And now we have some sellers who aren't offering commission, who are doing it through their broker, who are doing it. And so it gets very cloudy in terms of which comps have commission built in and which ones don't.
It's this time, and don't take this out and put it in the paper. We've always in the past and now, unless it's something exorbitant, we figured that we did not sales, and we've not factored in commission rates at all. But if it becomes a trend in a market where, let's say in Edina, it's gone from the standard down to half that, and the buyer's paying the other half, if that becomes tradition, then the whole market's going to change and it's not going to matter. That transition period, though, can be difficult.
How do we know that, though?
Well,
Because that doesn't get disclosed anywhere.
I know, so that's why I'm saying we just have to treat it, unless you say, hey, this was not a normal market transaction. And that's all, and you say that, then we could, you know, we might find out that one's skewed a little bit. And especially if it looks like it's so low because the buyer is paying all the commission and that's not reflected in the transaction. I know why things changed, but the non-disclosure, I don't necessarily agree with. I don't have a good answer for you yet. We just got to live through it. And if there's one off in there, it doesn't fit the mold, then we can't really consider it in the aggregate for the transaction.
So you can throw out
You can absolutely-
outliers.
If I suspect that something's wrong with the sale and it smells funny by looking at it, we can throw that out of consideration. Absolutely. Yeah. We do it all the time for things like, you know, you used to see this, you don't see it now. But back when I was young, 100 years ago, we'd see transactions where there was, the seller was paying 20 points. And there was a new car in the garage that was covered by half those points. Things like that happen in Texas a lot. That's why all our banks failed. You know, these things it was the Wild West. And I'm not even making those numbers up, 20, 22 points, 25. So 20% of that sale price was going back to the buyer for whatever, Caribbean vacation, everything under the sun. Yes.
When you're going back and looking at comps, are you seeing the sold price or the appraised price in addition to the sold price or just the sold price?
Appraised price doesn't get reported. At least it shouldn't. I mean, if you guys are reporting that, I don't know how you're getting a hold of it because.
Yeah, but like, not us, but you guys. So you're seeing stuff that didn't necessarily appraise, right? And then that's factoring.
No, let's say, for example, you're in a market where things are getting bid up. Yeah, and it's a really tight market and everybody's bidding, and this house sold for 600, but the appraisal came in at 5 and they bought it anyway. All we see is it closed at 6. The appraisal doesn't impact our decision making. Now, I've had appraisers tell me I'm not using that as a comp because I appraised it and I was $50,000 lower. I said, and yet you would use this sale over here that I know for a fact appraised for $25,000 lower, and you've got it in your report. Just because you do something doesn't change what the market is. That just means you didn't get there. That doesn't mean you set the market. I have appraisers say, we don't use cash sales because they didn't get an appraisal done. How the F do you know? You don't know what they did. And if I'm smart enough to be a cash buyer and I'm smart enough to accumulate that kind of money, I think I should have some deference. You know, I know how to make a good decision. You person.
So you can see financing terms. Can you see like down payment? Like, can you see if somebody put 50% down?
My lessons knows North Star that well. One of my other guys runs it. I get in there once in a while, but I use the matrix in Philadelphia and Atlantic Coast. I use Austin, Houston, San Antonio, Phoenix, and you can report financing terms in there. Some of them do, some of them don't. In Texas, everything's non-disclosure. So technically, you can see, we'll have a sale in these high-end properties. They'll have a sale price of $1.1 million, but it'll have an X in front of it. That means it was undisclosed and the realtor wasn't allowed to put it in MLS because that guy thinks he's, being hunted by the FBI or something. I don't know.
What about Minnesota?
Not sure. Is this non-disclosure? I haven't seen anything that was not disclosed. In Arizona, they know my waist size and everything. Yeah, it's crazy. Arizona's full disclosure. Well, no, it's just the disclosure of the price. We don't have to. We're not if Texas is a property rights state, because when Texas was formed, it was created by a bunch of people fleeing their creditors back east.
So we, like our final price goes on the MLS, so we would be a disclosure state.
Disclose, yeah.
Okay.
Are you required to put that though? That's the question. Yeah, that's probably right. This is a more progressive state. I would think that's the rule.
Although not with ADUs. ADUs are very limited here. Like, and have more than one per acre.
Proud of that. I think look, I understand we're in a housing crisis in the US, but I think that if you bought a house under single family zoning, expecting it to be, I think it should stay that way. But you're gonna lose eventually, yes.
To your point of some appraisers not using cash sales because there were no appraisal, will they do the same thing with like really, really high down payments because it's very likely that there was a waiver?
Yeah, that's my point. It doesn't make sense. I'm just telling you.
They'll do it with either.
I don't think that I've come across it less and less.
Mhm.
Most frequently, a cash sale won't be used because it's bought at a discount. It was either a bank sale or something like that. But the argument that I've heard from appraisers is that I don't use a cash sale because they didn't have the benefit of my keen intellect is not a great argument. Because a cash buyer, I would consider to be a more shrewd negotiator than a 3% down person that just got married and is desperate for a house. You know, I've been both in my life, and so I know. But I don't think, I was just giving you an anecdote. I don't know what those appraisers do, but what I'm telling you is they shouldn't do that as a default. Just to say I don't include cash sales for whatever reason is not legit, especially if a cash sale is the most representative transaction in the market there. If you got one sale in the subdivision, it's cash, you throw it out because of how it's financed, that makes no sense. That's all I'm saying. It needs to make sense. And that's the main thing when you're talking to appraisers, and I'm sure you all have or do, just as long as the conversation's reasonable, what can we do here? We're this far apart. I've got these sales. I'm sending them over to the lender. Will you look at them? He should say yes. He should consider how you got to the list price, how you guys negotiated the price. All that points for them to consider. What you're not supposed to do with appraisers is say $500,000 or you're out of here. That's enough. Or walk in with hundreds and just start going, well, here's what we got to do. Those things are not good.
Clark, can you just talk a little bit about too, like how, like, it's not just a random collection of appraisers that you work with or that we work with, and how we got to put together that panel a little bit? Like, how do we put together our appraisers that work with my AMC? It's not a random collection of people who don't know.
We qualify all our appraisers. Listen, in a lot of cases, let's say we're going into a new market as the AMC, and we go into, I don't know, let me just come up with some, Des Moines, Iowa, and we're not there. We are there, but let's say we're not. And Supreme's got a branch there. I'm actually going to talk to the Supreme branch. And I'm going to find out who they're, you know, who are the Keller Williams people I need to talk to. I'm going to talk to you, find out which appraisers. I'm going to take recommendations rather than just go into the list and pick somebody that's licensed. Because just because you have an appraisal certification doesn't mean you can write an appraisal. I think we all know that. Just because you have a broker's license doesn't mean you know how to sell real estate. There's a lot of experience behind being able to be successful with either one. So we want to find out, and I'm not above, I will talk to broker here, the agents here, and say, hey, here we are in Des Moines. What's been your experience with these appraisers? No, most of the time they're more than willing to help, and they're honest answers. And then if Eric's in Des Moines, or he'll find that out for me, then we'll vet them and put them on the panel. We don't make them go through a bunch of unnecessary, trainee work. Like you got to do 3, and then we'll decide whether we're approving you or not. I'm going to assume that based on the recommendations I get, they're capable. And if they meet those criteria and they deliver, and the main thing is if they're honest, responsive, and professional, they're going to stay on our panel and actually work their way up. If they ghost me when I've got an emergency, they're going to work their way down. It's just like that. What I can't take, this happens when we're busy, is you calling Eric calling me, he's either crying or cursing. Because this deal's got to close by the end of the month, and I've got an appraiser out there that's just gone to the Bahamas for a week and didn't tell anybody. And then he comes back and says, oh yeah, I was on vacation. Well, guess what, buddy? You're on vacation forever. And I feel like, and I move on, because that's the main thing in this business. And you all know this, is be professional. Be courteous and professional, and then we'll work through the technical problems of the appraisals as they come up. But if I got somebody that's non-responsive, I can't use them. And if I'm non-responsive to Eric, he can't use me, or to Ben, which is subsequently means I'm not being responsive to you. So that's how we get them on in short. And then if you want to really know, in a lot of these markets, I've known some of these guys for 25 years, and I know how they're going to behave, and they're all still alive. And that's a good thing. It's getting smaller. I mean, I'm losing them right and left, honestly. But so there's guys out there that I used to do work with their mother, and now I'm doing work with them. So it's kind of a long in those markets where we've been forever that way. So they got to be FHA certified. They got to be, we got to have both. In rare instances, will we use somebody in a rural market that's not on the FHA panel, just because we gotta have somebody. The reason that makes a difference is this, you go out and generate a conventional loan, and we go do the appraisal, and then something happens, credit score, for any reason, they have to move them to FHA, that guy's not on the FHA panel, then I've got to start all over again. And it happens rarely now, but sometimes it still happens. Tacos cold yet? I mean, I've held them in such rapt attention, they didn't even get up and eat.
Most people didn't even wanna go eat them.
Anything else? Ladies and gentlemen?
You have access to off market, things that usually never hit the MLS, right, or no?
We do, and the title company does, and especially if it's a builder, we will use them if it's an appropriate sale, and we can confirm it. If you tell me this house, you know, it's in a $2 million market, and Joe sold his house last week for $2 million off market, my broker handled it, but we can get the disclosure. We're not disclosing it to the public. We're getting into the report. If we have the documentation and it's the right sale, we'll absolutely use it. We should consider it.
Do you see it being the biggest change in appraisals? Like, is there anything that you haven't shared with us yet that's coming down?
Really, that form change is the biggest, and I see this as the second biggest. And I think the PIW, listen, this is taking work out of appraisers' hands, so they all complain about it. They had too much work in their hands when we were going through that anyway. You know, we're taking 3 weeks to get a job done right here in Hennepin County, and it's because, wasn't because they didn't like it, they had 100 files stacked up. If this can eliminate the gravy out of there, man, I'm for it all day long. We don't really make any money on these, but if it speeds the process up and keeps lending flowing, I'm promoting it. It's just like solar. That's a whole different topic. I am pro solar. Is it going to contribute a lot of money to the value of your home? I live in Arizona, so it's only going to help reduce your electric bill, which are extraordinarily high out there, but contributing value to a home, it may help market your home. Doesn't really contribute necessarily a whole lot of money, but it makes your house much more sellable. That just, it eases, it makes the market smoother. I think I'm pro solar like nobody's business. Anyway, it's different, and I'm pro for this too, because it makes things go smoother.
About AI, do you see AI being used with appraisals in the future?
Just went to a conference in San Antonio last month, and that's all we talked about. And it was rattling how much is going on out there. I am so old. I've got so much catching up to do, but there's so many large language models out there that does so many things. It's crazy. I can't talk to it specifically, but I've looked at reports that were written strictly by AI on properties that could pass muster in the CU portal. I've also seen it look like whoever wrote them was on LSD for a month. It doesn't make any sense at all. So it's still new and it's coming along, but it's got a lot of potential. Yeah.
So, is that the ABM tool, that measures and does all the floor plan? Are we using one of those tools do we have access to something like that to set up our floor plan and measurements really easy? Can we?
We have our photographer.
I'm sure.
Right, but I mean, can that, we as realtors come in and,
Yeah,
get our floor plan?
out there. I can't tell you what they are, but there's certainly tools out there that do that. This tool that we're using is called Capture, and it's written specifically for this product to upload straight into Fannie and Freddie.
Okay.
But literally, you walk through the house and that's all done just
Do
from,
we want that?
I don't know if you want it or not, but it sure is handy, and it's indisputable. It's not perfect either. It's still got some flaws, but we're getting through working the bugs out at a good time while it's still kind of slow.
So we're just relying on our producers to produce.
Well, if they have.
Right.
Y'all know more about marketing properties than I could ever know, but nothing helps an appraiser than to go through a house that's halfway clean. I'll just leave it at that. When you're selling houses, that's one thing. The stuff I see on refinances makes my toenails pop off. I'm not gonna lie. It's hire a crew to come in, do something. But that's just my prejudice. But it makes it harder for an appraiser, and we see it all. Look, appraisers are human beings. They're unconscious prejudices and emotions when they go look at a house impact their analysis. If their dog got ran over this morning, I don't care how objective you are, that's gonna consume all your thoughts that day. And you're probably not, you're likely not to give the best, favor to the houses you're looking at that day. Your wife left you. You could be the happiest man in the world, or you could be miserable. It just depends. So those kind of things, appraisers are human. So when something doesn't come in the way you expect it to, don't be like Eric and call me every kind of name in the world. Let's work through it. Because there could be a reason. There's probably a good reason for it. And when we get to the bottom of it, we correct it and fix it and move on. I mean, it's that simple. We fix human error every day. And I make a lot of mistakes, but we try. The appraisers try. Most of the guys I know or the gals they're out there trying to do a good job. There are some that have a police complex and think they're saving the world from overvaluation, but most of us we're just trying to report the market. That's what we do. And that's what we should be doing, reporting the market, not setting the market, not killing the market, not helping, just reporting what buyers and sellers are doing. That's the object of an appraisal. All right.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
I forgot to ask one question.
What is that?
So let's say a house closes at 500,000 and the financing, there's an appraisal gap coverage there where it appraised at 550 and
Or 450.
or whatever, yeah, and the buyers came up with that that gap. Do you see that, or do you just see it sold for 500?
We just see it sold for 500 when we're doing our comp, because that's what gets reported in MLS.
Okay, yeah.
Well, how it got there, we don't care. That's why some appraisers, I was saying, will say, I'm not using that as a comp because I know I appraised it for 450. That's not what matters. The transaction occurred at 500. That's the market. You just missed it.
Just like what you said at the end there.
Yeah, you just missed it. We got to report the market. And that's always, when things were going up really fast, we're always happy that high sale closed at 580 when the high sale we had was 510. Now the market's just taking a jump. Things just keep climbing over. Everybody's climbing over the top of each other in a market where there's not enough houses for sale.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you very much.
We're good, man.
I'm gonna have some time.
No, I just.
Yo, if you have any questions after the fact, shoot them my way. I'll get Bart to answer it. So
We'll run them through our AI generator and see what.
large.
Did that cover it?
Are you there?
Popping off.
LSD for a month.
Some people live, and I'm not,
Yeah.
AD or
AI is interesting. Interesting to have.
Yeah, it's really funny. So I just have a 23-year-old. And my mother-in-law came up here. And there was a $5 and at first they were like, oh, you're too big for this. And then she was like.
Okay, so that's what that software generates. And it's called, this is Cubicasa.
Okay.
Sorry. So that's one solution. If this whole thing is connected, Cubicasa is connected to the whole thing.
Okay, Matt.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's just from a walkthrough.
Oh, man, not a whole lot. Spring break a couple weeks ago. It was nice. Got out of town for a while.
Yeah, where'd you go?
We did, couple weeks.
Yeah.
Mandy?
And then.
Oh, I just did this.
It's up there, I think.
Well, the last printers didn't work on my computer.
Alright,
So I just never did it, but then I emailed Lydia some stuff that I needed printed, but she sent me, I'm assuming she sent me that.
Yep.
Little,
If I go to print off,
introduction after you back.
like,
Can
I already sent them.
Back in the groove.
But if I do the instruction.
Hey, motivation is.
Yeah.
Quasi.
It's like,
We're the
you
positive motivation.
can get started, you have to, no, I
Already, getting the book ready, yeah, I got one of them I'm selling, trying to sell right now, the other one, I just got
So like if
to,
I go,
just put it on the list.
Listing. Oh, okay.
That much, but they have an cruiser, we don't have a trailer.
You-
Oh, wow.
He doesn't have that much.
We just store it down.
The dry doctor.
zero and then your
Yeah.
last.
They put up on stands, it's kind of crazy, like, I don't know if you ever been. up
But it
those-
used to be zero.
Yeah.
These are these little tripod stands, these boats, you know, are 1,000 pounds, you know, and they're just sitting up on these things, and we stayed on ours, we stayed on ours last weekend on the shore, on the.
Really?
Stands, yeah.
And I get a girlfriend, yeah, just like. Wrap it up.
Then you're and then just.
Yeah.
And so there's an old timer down there that we know, we ran across with the real character.
Good on you.
All the time.
Yeah.
8 years
Then
ago,
when
they
you
had this house
log
down
into
there.
the
Well,
I
register,
said, Dave,
the
can you
screen,
tell
like,
Rhonda,
it sends
how many
something
boats
to
have
the
you
register,
seen blown
it
off
should
or
say right
fallen
there,
off
like,
the sands down here?
and then
Yeah.
And he looks at it and
print
goes,
it, and then.
exactly zero. Yeah, these guys know what to do, and yeah, they use these lifts, and then they have this hydraulic trailer that they
Okay.
lower to the ground and put underneath them. Then they raise it up and pick it up off the stands and pull them out, and then they pull it over there and they